Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Monday, March 20th, 2023. And our top story today, 1 in 4 Americans recognize the importance of estate planning, especially during times of inflation. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Jim Rosenthal is the Chief Executive Officer for Caring.com. Jim, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Great to be here, Jeffrey. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad we could talk about estate planning. Just last week, we talked about 2 caregivers. They're married, taking care of their parents, and they're taking care of their parents from a long distance. And having some of these very important documents, of course, very important. But you and the folks at Caring.com just released a very important study. 1 in 4 Americans recognize a greater need for estate planning with all this inflation that we're having. Why don't you give us the high order bit here?
You know, we do this study every year because we think it's so important that people have a will and have documents, for end of life. And frankly, we're frustrated that more people don't. And so doing this survey is to check out how's it going and also to continually remind people this is such an important thing. The emphasis this year was on, because inflation is such an important part of what's going on in our economy these days, was among other things, we wanted to test how, what are the effects of inflation? And what we found is that inflation definitely had people thinking more about their finances, about their financial future, and therefore more people thinking, yes, I do need to get a will in place. But we're still frustrated by the amount of people that have them and the reasons.
Yeah, and why do you think that is? I mean, we just came through COVID, and if that is not more of a reality check for even the youngest of us, that, hey, life is not finite. It's finite. It's not infinite. Why do you think that people don't get an estate plan or don't do some of these other important legal documents?
It's one of those things that you do once or twice in your life, so you're not well educated for it, so it's kind of easy to push off. And in fact, of those people that don't have them, 42% tell us it's because they're procrastinating. Which, I get. It's just something, like you can always do tomorrow, and, it keeps being tomorrow. About a third of the people say they don't do it because they don't have enough assets, which, many people don't really understand that you don't need to have that many assets to make it sensible to have a will, especially if you want to dictate how those assets are distributed after your death. And if you want to make it easier for whoever you're leaving them to access it and figure out what needs to happen with them. And then, 15% say they don't have the expertise and 14% say they can't afford it. You add all that up, and I mean, it happens to add to more than 100% because we let people give more than one answer, but it's just, there's so many reasons not to put it in place.
Yeah. And you bring up some really good points and people putting it off, and look, tomorrow is never guaranteed. But there are some real ramifications if you don't have an estate plan, Jim. I mean, there's probate. Every state has its own laws as it relates to your estate. I mean, it's really important to get ahead of this. You don't want to leave your family members, your loved ones, your friends with the burden of having to not only say goodbye to you and bury you or whatever that you choose to do, but also with your dispensation of assets. That's a big burden too.
Yeah, and that speaks to the number two reason that people who have a will put one in place, which is they've just lost a loved one. And they're typically going through it themselves, having to figure out what to do with the assets of that loved one, how to access them, how to get it through probate, how to figure out who gets what. And that's when they say, oh boy, I don't want to do that to my heirs. And I actually want to make sure that I can help determine what happens with them. So, when we ask people who have a will, what made you put that in place? 28% cite retirement, 26% the death of a loved one, which I was just talking about, and 22% talk about their kids. They started to expand their family and said it's time.
When you take a look at the numbers, you start parsing through them. Are there certain groups? I mean, we talk a lot about seniors, and of course, as you get older in age and you have more assets, you want to have an estate plan. But are there certain parts of the American population that maybe are really underrepresented when it comes to estate planning?
Well, as you'd expect, as people age, as you move up in age group, a greater percentage have a will. So for instance, the 18 to 34-year-old group, which surprisingly this year has picked up, 26% of them have a will. And the next group, 35 to 54, only slightly beats them with 27%. And then a much bigger group have it, at the older ages, such that in total, 1 in 3 people has one. But still, not enough. And in fact, one of the things we're doing at caring.com is we're offering this year a benefit that we will provide people with the services to get a will. And I'm curious to see how it goes, and that'll be something we can talk about in a year.
Yeah, well, I would, if I was able to do that, I would jump on it, because even if you have a will or you have plans, it's always good to refresh that. Jim, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about estate planning, and we'll probably lay out a path that you can take to plan your estate. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
Well, Jim, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2 this morning.
I wouldn't miss it. Come on.
Yeah, I know. This is, look, I think for us nerds out there, when you think about estate planning and retirement and just lifestyle planning, this is fun stuff. And really, it doesn't have to be painful. Jim, your organization does a lot of reviews around senior products. I think you're one of the most trafficked review sites out there for these types of products. So how do I, as Jeff Snyder, the almost 51-year-old, what steps do I need to take? How do I find that trusted advisor to guide me through that estate planning process?
So we invest significantly in our website, making sure it has a wealth of information, resources, and reviews on everything senior care, a lot of stuff on senior finance. And so we've got a big site dedicated to wills and estate planning, which you can find by going to caring.com/wills. And there it takes you through, I think we call it this estate planning 101, all the way down across the spectrum to deep detail on stuff you can do. It tells you ways to get started. You can do it yourself, which can be complicated for a lot of people. There's lots of online companies, or you can seek out a lawyer. And those are kind of the 3 ways to once you've kind of got a sense of where you're going, that you can get a will done.
And you really don't have to break the bank, Jim. I mean, you mentioned that there are lots of different alternatives. I was joking with our caregiving guests on last Friday about LegalZoom, which I think was founded by Robert Shapiro of the famed attorney. But you can go in so many different directions. You don't need to break the bank. So if people are worried about, hey, I don't have a lot of assets, I don't want to spend a lot of money, they can do this for a little bit of cost, not too much.
Yeah, there's online will creation services, which, as you say, for people who don't have a lot of assets or don't have complex holdings, that it can pretty much get you what you want. If you do have complex assets, a lot of them, you want to heavily dictate how those are distributed after your death. And you want a child to grow up to a certain age before they can have X. Then you probably want to go the route of a lawyer, which is going to cost you a little more, but does not need to cost you a lot. Lawyers are used to doing this, and many people, even when they think it's complicated, the lawyer will have done that in the past and knows exactly what paperwork is needed.
Jim, what about if you have a loved one and mom and dad, a cousin, someone who is getting up there in age, maybe they haven't thought this through. How do you broach that conversation? Because I've read horror stories where, when it comes to dispensation of assets, everyone goes at each other's throat. You don't want that. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to be a celebration of life. You don't want to you want to bring people together, not diverge them apart.
As an adult child to a senior, as that senior gets older, there's a role reversal. You get to the point where the adult child starts taking care of the senior, and there's lots of tough conversations that you need to start having, and we deal with a lot of those on our bigger website, caring.com. Everything from when it's time to take their car keys away. So it's really, what we stress is do your homework so you know what you're talking about, and then go have the conversation. And sometimes, depending on the senior, it may be more than one conversation. Adult children know their parents. They know how to, get them to understand something and make the right decisions. And they know that may be 4 conversations. But it's important to have those conversations, because what you don't want to do is get to the point where it's too late to have that conversation, either because, the person can't have it because, they just don't have the capacity to have it, or they passed away and you've never had that conversation, and you're in that complicated part we've already talked about, where sometimes the costs can be more than you're expecting, and you got to go through probate.
Last question, Jim. You create the will. What do you do with it? I mean, do you store it electronically? Do you put it in a safe? Do you give it to an attorney, a family friend? What do people generally do with the finalized, estate plan, the finalized will?
The answer to your question is yes. You do all those things.
Okay.
But you just want to make sure that there's somebody who, especially if you will name somebody to execute your will. So you definitely want that person to know. Now, sometimes you'll give them the will and let them read it ahead of time. Sometimes, because of some of the decisions you've made, you don't want them to read it ahead of time. So you make sure they know how to access it. Or if you're working with a lawyer, of course, the lawyer always has it, and that's a service they provide, as do the online services. So that's not something to worry about. That's already kind of figured out by plenty of people.
Yeah, you got to make sure you have it. It's signed, all the I's dotted, T's crossed. Jim, we're going to have to leave it there. Really appreciate the conversation. Great survey. We need to get more Americans thinking about their estate plan. You don't have to have a lot of assets. Look forward to talking with you again very soon. Thank you so much for sharing
Thanks,
your
Jeffrey.
perspective.
We're big fans of yours and love what you do. Keep doing it.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content. We'll visit our website and, of course, all of our 300 streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
But if you're tired of the same old,
Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.